It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, a brand new state-of-the-art stadium ushers in a new era of baseball in Wichita. But did you realize just how far back the city's baseball history goes and how impressive it is? We'll take a look back and see why the new team, the Wind Surge, has some tough acts to follow. Also, Central Kansas is known for building airplanes and growing wheat, but there was a time when the oil business was the hottest thing going. Learn about the boom in Valley Center that forever impacted the future of this thriving and spirited Sedgwick County town. Plus, folks in Garden Plain have found a fun way to bring people of all ages together, and they're welcoming visitors from other towns to join in, too. And for this Hesston man, retirement has meant exploring his creative side. See his amazing art and how it keeps him so excited about life as he approaches the century mark. In our Wichita Destination segment, we discover a pizza so special it has its own beer. And in our Kansas Wild Edge report, see how the birds get hungrier as the weather gets colder. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sierra Scott. Those stories are queued up and ready to roll for this week's edition of Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by
It's never too late to have fun.
Visit Wichita, bringing you Wichita destinations on Positively Kansas. Wichita, the heart of the country.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank Trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
A new stadium and a new team. Wichita is back in the baseball business, now at the highest level of the minor leagues. It's the latest chapter in a long history of hardball that began with local leagues and their star players who were the talk of the town. Jim Grayway shows us how baseball inspired community spirit and brought Wichitans together like nothing else.
Wichita has a new baseball stadium and a new team. The Wind Surge is the talk of the town. But as much hullabaloo as the Surge is generating, it'll be hard to match the glory days when baseball was indeed America's and Wichita's favorite pastime. Those were the days when it was the only game in town and there was no TV. And the teams that fans were most excited about were local, like the Watermen and the Civics. Glenda Spears' father, Glenn Hogue, played for both of those teams and was one of the Wichita City League's biggest stars.
One of these newspapers called him the Babe Ruth of the Sandlots.
Glenda has stacks and stacks of photos and newspaper clippings from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s that her grandmother collected. Glenn Hogue was a big man, strong as an ox, and an amazing hitter. His lifetime batting average, .541. When Glenda looks through all the memorabilia, she beams with pride.
I can't help it. Yes, he's my John Wayne.
Hogue and some of the other great local players were big celebrities in Wichita. Baseball historian Bob Reeves says that era was baseball's heyday.
Virtually every entity in town, the Civic Theater, First National Bank, the airplane companies, the electric company, a lot of civic organizations, churches, all those kind of things sponsored teams.
The best players would often be given jobs at those places in order to get them to play on the company team.
Almost everybody knew someone who was playing baseball or were related to someone who was playing baseball. And they took great pride in them. I mean, it was inter-city war practically, that there was so much pride in the local baseball team.
The build-up to these glory days went back several generations. Reeves says organized baseball first came to Kansas in 1867, when a group of Civil War veterans formed a team in Leavenworth. The game caught fire and spread west. Pro baseball came to Wichita around 1890. Meanwhile, the semi-pro City League got started for players at a lower level. In 1912, the team started sharing a new stadium on Ackerman Island. It was a unique ballpark, but unfortunately in 1933, disaster struck.
The ballpark burned. Ballparks traditionally were made of wood, and they never did really figure out the cause, although it was thought it was a discarded cigarette that caused it to burn.
The minor league team at the time, called the Aviators, packed up and left town. WPA money helped build the new Lawrence Stadium a year later, but it was the Great Depression and economics were tough. There would not be another minor league team in Wichita until 1950. That meant the best hardball around was being played by teams in the semi-pro city leagues. Glenn Hogue and the Wichita Water team won both city and state championships. Hogue retired from the game shortly before Wichita got its first affiliated professional team. It was the Indians till 55, the Braves till 58. Then that team left for another city. It wasn't until 1970 that affiliated minor league ball returned. It left again in 84, returned in 87, then left again in 2007. Reeves says professional baseball has had a roller coaster ride in Wichita.
So it has been overwhelmingly great and sometimes underwhelmingly. You know, it's been a strange baseball town.
Reeves says he expects the wind surge will attract large crowds to this new stadium at least for a few years. But he is concerned about the overall future of the game in general. It seems that young people are just not as interested in baseball as they used to be. But who knows, maybe change is in the wind and interest will surge, maybe? In Wichita, Jim Grayway for Positively Kansas.
Bob Reeves' book, Baseball in Wichita, is an easy read. It's a comprehensive history with lots of photos and fascinating facts. It's available at Amazon and at local bookstores. While baseball is a perennial favorite, a lot of people in Garden Plain are excited about another sport that anybody can have fun doing. The city opened its disc golf course 6 years ago, and lately, it's really been taking off. There are organized events like this nighttime tournament, brought out serious throwers as well as entire families who enjoyed fun and fellowship on a relaxing Saturday night.
Seeing the kids out here playing, being active instead of sitting in on the front of their phones or sitting in front of the TV, it's good.
It's just fun. It's quiet out here. You know everybody here because, you know, growing up here, it's a small town. Everybody's very nice to each other. You know, your kids can just go play and you don't have to worry in this town. It's just a great town to be in.
I think it just gives more options. We're trying to keep more people here instead of going into Wichita and doing stuff to where they can stay here and enjoy different opportunities to have leisurely fun.
While the disc golf course is great for local neighbors who already know each other, the community is inviting the rest of us who don't live in Garden Plain to come out and have some fun. There's no charge, and you just might make some new friends in a charming little town that you've probably never visited. The year is 1929. America is thrown into the Great Depression. Fortunately, the community of Valley Center was in the midst of an oil boom that helped it weather the economic storm. As Anthony Powell reports, that boom helped pave the way for the flourishing community that remains today.
For decades, Valley Center has been a thriving little community. But to understand its prosperity, you need to travel back in time and see how VC overcame adversity and capitalized on good fortune. First, the tough times.
And we've had, like I say, fires
for about 6 years, from 1911 to 1916, really wrecked Valley Center. So we lost about 10 big businesses and a lot of two-story buildings and one church.
But Hobson says during this period, there was an oil boom going on in many parts of Kansas, including towns like El Dorado and Augusta. Valley Center would soon get its turn.
In the early 1920s, they discovered oil sand up here in Valley Center, which led them to believe, yes, there's definitely oil around.
And in 1928, black gold exploded from the town soil. 100 wells were built, some even remain today. But it was oil company workers that really helped Valley Center get through the Great Depression.
Valley Center survived and did very well during the Depression years because of the oil maintenance people here that kept all these wells operating. They got regular paychecks. And that's what kept Valley Center really going, because at one time, people were amazed to find out Valley Center had 6 sit-down restaurants in town.
Numerous other businesses thrived as well. Meanwhile, the Valley Center boom greatly benefited many other parts of Sedgwick County.
But with the right number 1 well, it boomed Sedgwick County. In Sedgwick County, they were signed up leases all over Sedgwick County.
The Valley Center oil boom is chronicled at the Historical Museum by an exhibit created in 2019 by some WSU history students, whose teacher, Dee Harris, is a VC native.
So what they did, went in and researched, and they researched some National Archives and things, and they got a lot of pictures. They made pictures for us, copies of pictures.
Meanwhile, it was at the museum that we found out there's a bit of an ironic twist when it comes to the way the oil boom has, in a few cases, affected the city's current growth. The oil boom of the 1920s has actually caused delays with some modern-day Valley Center development. This Casey's behind me off Meridian Street was in the middle of being constructed back in 2014 when a massive anchor from an oil derrick was found underground on the property.
And we've run into a number of buried pipelines in the development of the city and development of housing areas. And then you have to stop the whole process of the development, and then you have to go through and find out, are those wells active, are those pipelines flowing?
In most cases, like at Casey's, remnants can be removed and construction can continue. In some parts of the city, though, building is impossible because of active wells and lines. A small price to pay, though, when you realize the vital role the oil boom played in helping Valley Center survive and thrive. I'm Anthony Powell for Positively Kansas.
The oil boom also led to Valley Center having numerous grocery stores, filling stations, a large hotel, and many retail businesses. Well, we're all going to get older. We can't stop that, but we often do have some control over how we spend those older years. Paul Friesen of Hesston is still living an exciting life at 96, doing what he loves and making the world a better place along the way. Chris Frank has the story.
I have always tried to have a purpose for living.
On almost any given day, you can find Paul Friesen in this art studio on the Hesston College campus. It would be hard to miss him because the studio is named after him. It was gifted to him by the college. In fact, the Friesen Center for the Visual Arts, where Hesston students take art classes, bears the Friesen family name. At the age of 96, most folks aren't making a lot of plans on what to do next. But most folks aren't like Paul Friesen.
If I wake up at night, oftentimes I'm planning things.
And those plans have little to do with some traditional images some folks have of retirement.
I didn't want to be rocking a chair. I didn't want to be sitting around just mowing lawns or digging around in the garden.
Friesen planned years in advance for what he wanted to do when he would step away from his day job. Friesen's found something to not only stimulate his heart and mind, but to also exercise his body.
This is my physical therapy. I sort of killed two birds with one stone.
You won't find him taking any physical activity classes or spending time in a gym to work up a sweat. He gets a physical workout right here in his art studio.
I prefer to do my physical therapy where I achieve something more than just a lot of air.
His love for transforming raw materials like wood and clay started as a youth.
As a child, my parents gave me tools, hand tools to work with, for we had no electricity where we lived.
That was the village of Sankra, India. Besides having no electricity, there weren't any cars either until his parents introduced the first Model T to the village in the 1920s. Now, Paul was born in Newton, but at 3 months before he could develop any Kansas memories, his parents carted him off to India where they served as missionaries.
I lived there for 17 years.
While his dad was spreading the Christian gospel, his mother was treating patients in a Mennonite clinic there.
My mother became a medical doctor, and she became a medical doctor basically because she had heard that the Indian women refused to go to a male physician.
Friesen got interested in woodworking by watching carpenters in India.
I was going around pounding furniture with a hammer as a kid, and my parents decided they had to simply give me something that made more sense.
So he says he got a new woodworking tool every Christmas.
This looks like it's going to be a real good piece of wood.
Some would look at this and see it simply as a log. Friesen sees art waiting to be formed.
I'm still having to work out this whole thing. I'm not sure just where I'm going to go with it yet.
But he will get there.
Oftentimes, I would not know what I was going to end up with until I had actually finished.
Friesen also channels his talents to making children's toys and kitchen utensils. Many of those are for sale at the gift shop at the Showalter Villa in Hesston, where Friesen lives. The proceeds from the sales of Friesen's work goes into the Good Samaritan Caring Fund, which helps to cover some of the costs for folks in the Showalter Villa who can't cover all their costs. You can also find his art displayed in the gallery and foyer of the Friesen Center on campus. And there's a story behind every piece.
This is the one I did for the centennial celebration of the college.
Someone brought in a cedar log from Canton, Kansas. Friesen turned a rotting piece of wood into a lasting piece of art representing in part the Kansas tallgrass. Now, whether he's using power tools to carve into a tree branch or pounding a mallet against a chisel, they are taxing chores. So after Paul has worked a while on one project, he turns to something else, even if it's just to use different muscles.
An old man has aches in the shoulder.
You might say he's entitled to work-related aches. After all, remember this artist is 96 years old. Now, after spending 17 years in India, Friesen returned to the U.S. to attend college. Once he graduated, he pastored churches, something he says he enjoyed. But a friend of his, the president of Hesston College, had a desperate need for an art teacher to keep school accreditation. He turned to Friesen, begging him to start an art program here, something Friesen says he wasn't the least bit interested in doing.
But he kept after me for 2 years, and I finally gave in.
That was 1956. He taught at Hesston and Bethel colleges until 1989. But he keeps coming back here to the campus.
This is also physical therapy for my legs.
The potter's wheel, lathe, and other tools beckon him to keep creating.
I'll probably do it until they pick me up off the floor.
He says it gets back to having a purpose in life.
It gives me a feeling of still being independent, rather than relying upon somebody to take care of me.
So Friesen's advice to others is,
do all you can to keep yourself in operating condition.
And that motivates him to keep busy with something he very much enjoys. In Hesston, this is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
Friesen says keeping in operating condition includes eating properly, exercising, and putting your brain to work by reading or doing something creative. There are 3 great tastes that go great together, all on the same block. In this week's edition of Wichita Destinations, Brian Ramsdale shows you where to get a delicious, authentic Italian pizza, an amazing craft beer brewed specifically for that pizza, and a sweet treat to top it all off.
Who doesn't love food, especially when that food is pizza, beer, and donuts? There's a sweet spot in Wichita for those looking for a tasty treat, and it's all located on the same block.
If they're from out of state, they're typically surprised that this type of pizza exists here in Wichita.
Robert McMullen actually trained in Italy to bring what's called Neapolitan pizza to Wichita.
We knew that we were going to have to educate our customers because this was something that was, again, completely alien to the area. But we also wanted to provide a food experience that was clean.
This pizza is different than your traditional deep dish. The crust is soft, the ingredients are simple, and the process of making these Neapolitan pizzas dates back hundreds of years.
I mean, they've been doing it this way forever.
And nothing helps a good pizza quite like beer. And right next door, the Hopping Gnome Brewing Company delivers, even making a custom beer just for the Neapolitan pizza.
Is keep it as authentic and light as possible, which just makes a real easy drinking crisp beer, which goes perfect with pizza.
Decorated all around the brewery are the Hopping Gnome's namesake, and most things on the menu have some gnome reference, except the beer crafted for Piatto's Pizza. That has a special name.
When it came to the name, we looked up what's gnome in Italian or what's something. He's like, I want to do something with you guys, you're our neighbors. And so he said, vicinato means neighbors in Italian. So we love to tell that story because a lot of people don't know that and they can't say it, they don't know what it is. And that's what it means. It means a neighbor. And we're like, yeah, it's for our pizza neighbors.
But that perfect meal isn't complete without something a little sweet. And just 2 doors down is a Wichita staple, the Donut Hole. Here, there are donuts for pretty much every taste, making this a great spot to end your evening. From the pizza, to the beer glasses, to the donuts, there's plenty of circles on this block. But it all boils down to this, a great experience for the customers.
Just kind of feel like it's home, and that's what we want everybody to feel like. That even if they're from out of town or they live far east or west, they don't live downtown, but this is just feels like home.
You can find out about this and other exciting Wichita destinations at visitwichita.com. Food is essential fuel for Kansas birds as the weather gets cold. Without a non-stop supply of nourishment, they'd freeze to death, as Mike Blair shows us in this week's Kansas Wild Edge Report.
A rare light pillar at daybreak signaled brutal cold. Tiny ice crystals suspended in air reflected the rising sun to cause a heavenly golden streak. And wind chills far below zero made it a rough start for wildlife waking up. Clouds closed in and snowflakes fell. Food was key to warmth, and birds got active despite the freeze. A flock of mountain bluebirds, wintering far east of their normal alpine homes, congregated at cedars along with other bird species. Blue cedar berries are often abundant, making great emergency winter food for birds. But their small, sweet fruits covering hard seeds require quantities for adequate nutrition. Cedar berries pass through bird digestive systems in less than an hour. So the birds fed heavily throughout the day, staying on the lee side of windbreak protection to fight the cold. It was a rare and close opportunity to watch them feed. Male mountain bluebirds are richly colored, uniquely sky blue, unlike their more common cousins, the eastern bluebirds. Eastern males are darker blue and marked with russet breasts. Both relish cedar berries, as do handsome cedar waxwings and assorted other birds. So cedar trees were the bistros of choice on such a brutal day. Birds often picked their berries from a perch, but today they hovered and fed mostly on the wing. Certain trees having the best fruits drew a crowd, and it was faster to eat by directly attacking berry clusters. Also, the intense activity helped warm them against frigid winds, even while requiring more energy. So they flew in place for seconds at a time, picking and sorting their food. Bad berries were quickly discarded without swallowing. At natural flight speed, wings were a blur. But slow motion revealed amazing flight abilities. Bluebirds weren't the only ones feeding. A marsh hawk suddenly came on scene, hoping to catch a distracted bird. But he was seen in time, and the entire flock of feeders exploded away to safety. The marsh hawk moved on, cold and hungry. Hard weather is always part of the deal for wildlife that lives outdoors. But nature's bounty provides many ways to help them make it through to easier days. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. We hope you enjoyed the show. Positively Kansas at kpts.org is our email address. We always appreciate your story ideas. Until next time, I'm Sierra Scott. See you again soon.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Visit Wichita, bringing you Wichita destinations on Positively Kansas. Wichita, the heart of the country.
Move before you have to. It's much more fun that way.